Good evening, friends. Please shut your eyes. Please shut your eyes. Welcome back. So friends, let's begin with a quick revision. What did we study in the last class? Okay. भैया माइक पकड़ा दीजिए, किसी को भी दे दीजिए, किसी को भी. हाँ, so please tell me, give me a simple definition of sociology.
Hello.
Yes.
Sociology, according to Comte, sociology is the study of social phenomena.
All right. Pass on the mic to your neighbor. No, the one in blue. Yes, take up the mic. What did we discuss about the nature of the discipline of sociology? Don't look up your notes. Yes? Please study regularly, guys, for your own sake. Pass on the mic. Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
When we study the nature of human society, study of the human.
Okay, so we study human societies and groupings, not say of other animals. Pass on the mic. So does it mean we neglect other species?
No, sir, we don't neglect other species, and we study the relationship between human beings and other species.
All right, very well put. Pass on the mic. What else did we discuss about the nature of the discipline of sociology? Yes?
Nature of sociology is divided into two types, that is micro and macro.
Okay.
Micro is including small institutions, and macro is including big institutions.
Pass on the mic. Is he correct? What he just said, is that correct? Speak up.
Yes, sir.
That's a very emphatic yes, but it is not correct. Okay? Pass on the mic. Why was he not correct?
Sir, because in macro sociology we broadly consider social groups, not in individuals.
In?
Individuals.
In which sociology?
Macro.
Macro. All right. And what is micro?
Sir, in micro we consider individual.
Yes. Correct. Broadly, correct. Okay, pass on the mic. What else can you tell us about the nature of sociology?
So it is descriptive, not descriptive.
Correct. Pass it on to the person behind you. What does that mean?
Sir, it tells about the social fact that is presently in the society it is residing. And it does not tell that how the society ought to be.
Very good. Pass it on. Does anybody say we should be talking about the shoulds? Should we be concerned about how society should be?
Yes, sir. In present, after Weber, we also study about.
Chalo, going in the flow of Weber, but ठीक है, broadly. All right. Pass on the mic. What else can you tell us about the nature?
Sir, in sociology, generally first we used to study generalized statement, but now we are moving towards unique statement as well.
All right, perfect. Pass on. What else? Yes. Speak up. Okay, so tell us what is society?
The relationship between humans
And?
social animals.
Okay. Can we do better than that? Anybody please pass on the mic. No. Let the mic go around. Yes?
Society comprises of all human beings, their interpersonal
It comprises of human beings
and their relations among
and their relationships. Absolutely. Please pass on the mic. How does MacIver describe society? Sorry? Let him know. How does MacIver explain or describe society?
I can't.
No. Speak slightly clearly, please.
Society is a web of interpersonal relations.
Absolutely. Good. Pass it on. Hold the mic, somebody. He's passing it on and nobody is holding it. So tell me, what? How else did we understand? What does Comte liken the society to? Compare it to?
Society is like an organism possessing a harmony and a structure.
Harmony of structure and
Function.
function. Very good. Pass on the mic. What do you mean by structure?
Order of arrangement.
All right. Very good. Pass it on. What do you understand by the term function?
Hello. How the society working?
How the society
Working.
improve upon that? The next person. Pass on the mic.
The functioning of the society.
You don't explain the word function by using the word function. What is function?
The purpose of the.
All right. Absolutely. The purpose it serves. That is the function. Pass on the mic to the other side. So, what is the function of the, or some functions of the family?
Functions of family,
Of family as a social institution.
like making food, to give the birth and rise up.
All right. That's fine. Pass on the mic. What's the function of the education system?
So to impart knowledge.
To what end? I mean, what purpose does that serve, imparting of knowledge?
So for the better well-being of a person and for the society.
And
For the society.
all right, we'll buy that for now. Pass on the mic. What's the function of the economy?
Run the country.
Economy. What does the economy do that benefits the society as a whole? What does the economy do for the society? That's what we are asking when we are asking you the functions.
Study about the money control.
That is what economists do. What does the economy do? Pass on the mic. Yes?
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, what's the question?
What is the function of the economy?
Sir, it studies the economy of the society, like the money control and inflation.
You're talking about the subject, economics. I'm talking about the economy as a social institution. What does it do? I'm not asking you what is economics. That is what you're telling me, no? I'm asking you what does the economy do for the society? How does it contribute to the maintenance and well-being of the society, guys? Next person.
Consumption.
All right. Production, distribution, consumption, all these things, absolutely. All right. Good. Pass on the mic. What do you understand by the word harmony when Comte says There is harmony of structure and function.
Coordination between people.
Or say coordination, interdependence, integration between the various social institutions. All right, fine, pass on. Fill in the blank. Every society has its own. Let the guy with the mic do it. Okay, fine. What is culture?
Culture, it is a man-made,
Yes.
and what is nature is not a culture.
All right. What else? What? Pass on the mic. What apart from that can you tell us about culture, apart from the fact that it is man-made?
Culture is not for individuals.
So it is shared and it is transmitted from one generation to the next. Fine. Pass on the mic. Then what? Louder.
Culture is the way of life for the people of a society.
Absolutely. Said who? देख के बोला तो क्या बोला? Ralph Linton. Fine, fine, thank you. So I think that's pretty much what we discussed yesterday. Any doubts? Yes. Social phenomena is any social thing, na? Any causative factors which are social in nature, or any occurrences which are impacting the society as such. Okay? Anything social, like social statics, they are part of a social phenomena. Social dynamics, they are social phenomena. It is a general English term, not a sociological concept, which basically is referring to anything social.
So how is it different from social fact and
Social facts, Durkheim uses the term social facts to refer to social phenomena. How he defines social facts we will discuss when we come to Durkheim. That may not be very intellectually satisfying, but then we'll be moving too far ahead if I were to explain social facts right now.
social phenomena is nothing but a general term.
General term, yes. Yes, brother? Now this perspective, his question is, Comte says society is characterized by harmony. Isn't that harmony temporary? Okay, so I'm answering that. So, 1 second, sorry. Online students, please confirm that I am audible and visible. If you could type a yes. Yes, thank you, thank you. Fine, fine, that's it. Fine. Thank you. So, yeah, his question is whether the harmony is temporary. This perspective upon which this statement is based is called the functional theory or the functional perspective in sociology. It is frequently accused of having a, too rosy a picture of social life, of assuming cooperation, integration, harmony, and ignoring conflict, exploitation, and oppression. So that is that. One could argue to criticize that this harmony is temporary, superficial, intermittent with conflict, and so on. Yes. Yes. Sorry?
Every culture is flexible.
Repeat your question. Is every culture flexible? Flexible or not? See, flexible indicates whether there's a willingness to, adapt or change. Some cultures may show a greater receptivity to new elements. Some cultures may be relatively closed or, resistant to new elements. Nevertheless, all cultures are forever changing. No culture is static. Even if a culture is resistant to new elements, it cannot remain static. There are bound to be changes in every culture due to a variety of factors. It could be cultural contact with other cultures, incorporation of new cultural elements, or something as basic as demographic changes. Population size changes, cultural elements would also be affected. Okay? So that is that. So some cultures may have greater receptivity to change than others, to answer your question, but all cultures do undergo changes.
We can say the culture is both flexible and rigid also.
I won't use the terms flexible and rigid are not the best terms. I would say that cultures exhibit a fair degree of continuity, but they also change. I'll prefer those terms. Huh? Yes, any other? Pass on the mic to the people near you. Yes, meanwhile I'm taking a doubt from here. Yes.
Is economic activity the part of culture?
Yes, the nature of the economy is also a part of the culture. Absolutely. Yes. Sorry? One can have conceptions of the question is there any concept of ideal society? One can have conceptions of an ideal social arrangement. For instance, many consider the Marxist notion of communism to be an ideal society because it is an egalitarian society. In Hindu Dharma, you have this concept of Ramarajya, right, which we consider to be an ideal society. So theology may have, or religions may have a certain notion of ideal society. Certain ideologies and philosophies may have a certain notion of ideal society. Yes? How we have to utilize that? His question is, if we have multiple definitions of the same thing, like say culture or society, sociology, how do we utilize that? What I would suggest is remember any one and use it in your answers. Simply. Remember one which to you appears to be reasonably comprehensive and easy to remember. Right? And then you use it in your answers. Yes? Dowry system? Yes, it is a part of our culture. Crimes kind of militate against the law of the land, which is the kind of the codified morality, right? But crimes do exist in all societies. Dowry pratha, Dahej pratha or dowry system is a part of our culture for sure. Trends are more faddish in the sense they are passing. They are here today and gone tomorrow. Culture is simply the whole way of life of a people. Agar if it the question is when does a trend transform into an element of culture? I would say that when it kind of becomes somewhat of an integral part of a society and gets passed down from one generation to the next. Possibly a part of culture for a segment of the society. It's been around for a while. It's been 2-3 generations. Sorry? Hypothetical. I didn't understand your question. You'll have to rephrase it. What do you mean by a hypothetical society? Fictitious. We typically don't do that. When we study society or in sociology, we study society as it exists. Not even an ideal notion of how a society should be. Yes? Please don't cross talk, yeah? Please don't talk amongst yourselves. Yeah. So whatever is, we can say, man-made, shared and passed on from a generation to the next. can be regarded as a part of culture. Nepotism, one may argue, or dynasticism is a part of the political culture in our society. Chaliye, moving ahead. Last. Sorry?
Civilization is also sometimes defined as a way of life. So, can you differentiate between civilization and culture?
Civilization is in the context of, an evolutionary schema or model, which presumes that societies evolve from a primitive savage type to a medieval barbarian type to a stage of civilization. So there was this evolutionary model developed by European scholars, which saw, for example, to take a world historic example, the African tribes as primitives, savages, the agrarian societies in Asia or China as belonging to the medieval feudal era, okay, and the Western modern nation state and the industrial economy as civilization. So the word civilization has that notion of, kind of looking down upon those which are seen as, lagging behind on the evolutionary scale. That is how the context in which the word civilization is used. Culture, on the other hand, all people have a culture. So when I use the term culture, I don't distinguish, denigrate or demean, say, the way of life of a tribal people or consider that of the industrial societies as any superior. Right? So it is simply the way of life of a people without any connotation of evolution. Chaliye, moving ahead with your permission. Maybe after, because we have an agenda to fulfill. Moving on to the emergence of sociology. That's the agenda for the day. We have pen card. I have technologically upgraded. Okay. Emergence of sociology. When did sociology emerge, friends? 1838, or broadly the 19th century. Please note down some milestones in the development of sociology as an academic field. It was in 1838 that Comte coined the term sociology. The first course in sociology was started by William Graham Sumner in USA in 1875. The first course by the name of sociology was started in 1875 by Sri William Graham Sumner in the United States of America. The first department of sociology in USA was established in 1892 by Albion Small. And in 1895, the first department of sociology on European soil was established by Sri Emile Durkheim. It's there on the board. 1838, the term was coined by Comte. 1875, the first course by the name of sociology started in USA by William Graham Sumner. In 1892, the first department of sociology was established by Albion Small in USA. 1895, the first department in Europe started by Durkheim. Again, it was in the year 1895 that the first journal, academic journal of sociology, was begun in the United States of America. The question is why? Why did sociology emerge as an academic discipline? These are the milestones, the dates. But why in the 19th century? This is the 19th century period basically, right? Why not in the 11th century or the 21st for that matter? Yes?
Basically, there was a revolution going on everywhere. Industrial revolution and changing nature of society.
So, revolution was going on, so what's that got to do with academia? With subjects being established?
Post-revolution, people are moving towards change and modernity.
So, what's the big deal if I were to ask you? I mean, even if it is a big deal, how should that impact the emergence of a new subject? Yes? Because of the Renaissance.
There was we can say, a new discoveries, and there was a question that why these things exist, why these things don't exist. That's why the
Renaissance was 2 centuries prior to the establishment of sociology.
was a gradual, we can say gradually it was moving toward that direction after Renaissance.
But why? I mean, that's not satisfactory. Yes? So his contention is that it was due to the changes brought about by the French and industrial revolutions that the discipline of sociology was established. Tell me, were different aspects of social life not being studied or analyzed before the 19th century? What is your sense? Yes or no? Clearly it was. By who? Philosophers, men of religion, rulers, lawgivers, church, right? Different, all sorts of political science. It's a much older discipline. So already society or various aspects of social life were being studied even before the establishment of the discipline of sociology. Then why should a new discipline be established to study near about the same things?
Because there was a need felt at that time.
Why?
So because due to various revolutions that are happening, like French Revolution, Industrial Revolutions, so it created a chaos in the society, and these philosophers who are actually studying these things earlier are not able to get to those changes which happened suddenly.
That's quite on the mark. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So point is, friends, yes, various aspects of social life were being studied since times immemorial. Since times literally immemorial. Since very long years. Since thousands of years. Was the society changing prior to the revolutions? Yes or no? Yes, it was. You bet it was. Even changing, undergoing changes even before the revolutions. But the revolutions in the 18th and 19th centuries, they brought about a very fundamental transformation of society. And the existing branches of knowledge now seemed no more adequate or well equipped to make sense of those transformative changes. And hence the need was felt for a new academic discipline which was dedicated to the scientific study of society. Simply all the existing branches of knowledge, the lawgivers, the theologians, the political scientists, the philosophers, they simply did not seem any more capable to make sense of all the transformative changes that were taking place in the then European society. So no discipline, friends, please appreciate, emerges in an intellectual vacuum. It is only when a pressing need is felt for a discipline that it makes appearance in the comity of disciplines. Are you with me on this? So let us now try to appreciate what were those transformative changes taking place in European society in the about the 18th and 19th centuries. One transformative event, of course, was the French Revolution. Wait. Be patient. Yes. So one important event is the French Revolution, which took place in the second half of the 18th century, 1789 to 1799. In order to understand the impact of the French Revolution, we need to go back in French history a bit. Okay, so I'll be explaining to you what was the nature of French society prior to the revolution and what changes were brought about as a result of the revolution. In the examination, in your sociology paper, you will not be asked about the factors that led to the French Revolution or something like that. If you get a question, it will be in the sense of how did the French and industrial revolutions contribute to the emergence of sociology. But I need to put things in perspective, and therefore I will be discussing what the French Revolution was all about. The French society that time was divided into three estates. Three estates. E-S-T-A-T-E-S. I'm talking about the time period of the revolution. The French society was divided into three estates. The term for three classes that were prevalent in French society. It was called the estate system. And these were unimaginatively named as the first estate, the second, and the third estate. The first estate comprised of the clergy or the priestly class. Right? Clergy meaning the, like you have the Brahmins, we have the Brahmins, they are the clergy, the men of religion, okay, or the church officials. The second estate comprised of the nobility. The nobility. And the third estate comprised of the commoners. Commoners. Nobility roughly equated with, say, the zamindar and the, royals kind of a class. And then you had the commoners, meaning the Aam Aadmi, the ordinary people. Yeah? Demographically, the first and the second estate comprise less than 3% of the French population. And the overwhelming bulk of the population, 97 odd percent, belong to the third estate. At the time of the revolution, France was ruled by, King Louis XVI. Above the three estates was the monarch. Okay? Monarchy was above the three estates, and the reigning monarch at the time of the revolution, the reigning king, was Louis XVI. who belonged to the Bourbon dynasty. Bourbon dynasty. Okay? The socio-political climate was that there was a lot of unrest and angst amongst the people. There was a very, inflation was very high in then France. A lot of power and privilege was monopolized by the first two estates. All power and privilege was concentrated in the first two estates. Which were seen as largely corrupt and self-serving. The French monarchy was also supporting the American revolutionaries in what we today call USA. There were 13 British colonies that time, and they had launched a war of independence, which was a military campaign unlike ours, which was a non-violent struggle. Theirs was a military campaign to drive out the British rulers from USA, right? And the French monarchy was supporting the American revolutionaries, monetarily, militarily, in terms of material resources and everything. To support the American war effort, the French monarchy imposed new high taxes on the commoners. And this further worsened the conditions of the common people. The monarchy was seen as very distant and unconcerned about the plight of the ordinary people. It was seen as very unresponsive to their plight. There is a very famous, notorious queen of that era, Mary Antoinette. And it is, the legend has it that when the common people went to the queen, that Rani Ma, we have nothing to eat, we can't even afford bread. She is famously, apparently, had said that if you can't eat bread, then you eat cake. Right? Just showing the insensitivity or the disconnect with the ground realities that the monarchy, the French monarchy, suffered from. It's like telling an Indian who says, I can't afford roti, you tell him, okay, go and eat butter chicken. Right? It's like you sitting in your ivory tower, you don't even realize that a person who can't have roti, how will he afford butter chicken? Right? So the monarchy was seen as very distant and living in its own ivory towers, unconcerned about the plight of the common people. It was in this context that the revolution took place. And the outcome of the revolution was transformative. It brought about some important, significant changes in French society. So what changes resulted from the revolution? How did the French society, this three estates thing, arrangement, undergo a fundamental transformation? As follows. For one, the monarchy was replaced by a republican form of government. France was declared a republic. So monarchy was abolished and France was declared a republic. What do you mean by a republic? What is a republic, friends? Do you know any other republic other than France? India. We are a republic. What do you mean when you say we are a republic? Any one person, yeah? Raise your hand and then your, yeah. Elected head of the state. That the head of the state, it's not a hereditary office, but the incumbent holds power for a finite period and comes to occupy it after due election. That is simply the meaning of republic, right? It's not a hereditary office. So monarchy was abolished and France was declared a republic. Very importantly, the powers of the church were significantly curtailed. All but taken away. So the church was defanged, as it were. Defanged in the sense it was made, its powers were taken away. The church was very powerful in the pre-revolution France, including it owned vast swaths of land. It also had the power to impose taxes. And very importantly, the relationship of the state with the church was transformed. How? France emerged as what kind of a state? Secular state. Secularism implying a very strict separation of church and state, or religion and government. Feudalism as a system was abolished. The feudal lords enjoyed several privileges. They even maintained private armies, could extract labor from the commoners. All their privileges were taken away and feudalism was sought to be abolished. And last but definitely not the least, a new ideology emerged. A new set of ideals emerged from the French Revolution. Those ideals were very radical. And today, they are a part of the socio-political architecture of nearly all modern societies. In fact, they also find resonance in our constitution. Which ideals are we talking about? Liberty, equality, and fraternity. Are these really radical ideas? Aren't they quite run on the mill, if I were to play the devil's advocate? Aren't they very self-evident? Equality, of course, no? We're all equal at a fundamental level, or not? Are these radical ideas or are they like ordinary run on the mill? Why radical? What's so radical about them? Yeah, raise your hand and then speak. Yes? At that time they were. Why? Yes? People getting new rights. Yes? Absolutely. Not just there was no equality. Is there equality today? There is no equality even today. But the notion of equality or the belief in the fundamental equality of all human beings was also not there in pre-revolution France. Please appreciate. We are not talking about actual equality on the ground, but a belief in the fundamental equality of all mankind. That was also not there. In fact, people believed in the opposite, that people are fundamentally unequal. People are born high and low. Are you with me? So somebody with the right parentage or lineage is born superior to somebody who is of inferior birth. Those were the prevailing ideas. And it was in that context that equality sounded a radical departure. Liberty, was it a new idea? Why? Earlier were people chained to their seats. Why was liberty? Why was liberty a new idea? Slavery wasn't ever at the scale, to make it a norm, at least in pre-revolutionary France. Yes? Various things. People were tied or chained, literally, if not literally, but to handed down knowledge. They were tied by religion, custom. You did not have freedoms to question those in authority. Are you with me? So in that context, liberty, equality, fraternity, these were radical ideas. And this is, arguably one of the biggest contributions of the French Revolution to the modern world. And you find these now in constitutions or political systems across the globe, including here in India. So point is, friends, all in all, the French Revolution gave birth to a radically different society from the pre-revolution France. The role of religion in society, particularly its relationship with the state, stood fundamentally or drastically reduced, to put it bluntly. The nature of the state itself underwent a transformation from being a monarchy. Thanks a lot. From being a monarchy. Bourbon dynasty was a very long-serving dynasty. This guy, imagine he was named Louis the 16th. And had there been a change of name somewhere, and that monarchy as a system of governance was abolished and replaced by the republican form of government. Feudalism was done away with. And a new kind of a society emerged in France. Now let us go and see what kind of changes did the Industrial Revolution lead to. When was the Industrial Revolution, the time period? Sorry? Mid of the till? Correct. Absolutely. So the Industrial Revolution can broadly be understood from roughly say 1760 to 1840. What was the Industrial Revolution? In its essence, fundamentally what it meant. Sorry? How is it changing? And preferably converse in English for the benefit of the whole class. Yes? From handmade to machine made. Quite correct, right? So goods were being produced earlier as well. Clothes were being produced. People used to wear clothes and slippers and this or that. But earlier these were produced by hand. So Industrial Revolution at a very fundamental level entailed a shift away from the use of human or animal muscle power in the process of production to the use of machinery. Absolutely. And this led to a massive increase in the quantum of production. The total output that was being produced increased slightly or increased manifold, not slightly. Not only did the total quantum or output of production increase, also increased the productivity. or the production efficiency. Meaning with fewer inputs, say whether of time, labor, raw materials, more output could be generated. So the economy was quite fundamentally transformed by the Industrial Revolution. It took place in which segment of the economy? Which sector? Textiles. It began with textiles for sure. Where? Where in England? Absolutely correct, in England, but where in England? Manchester. And what was the invention which led to this? The spinning jenny. Absolutely. There was a machinery kind of called the spinning jenny. Okay, and its invention contributed significantly to massive increase in the productive capacity and led to mechanization of textile production. Right? It began with textiles, but please appreciate it spread soon to almost each and every sector of the economy. It did not remain confined to textiles. Whether it was textiles or glass making, chemicals manufacturing, mining, you name it, and each and every sector, later on automobiles, electricity generation, each and every sector of economic activity underwent basically this shift away from human labor power as an input to machinery, what we call the Industrial Revolution. Did it remain confined to the Great Britain? Of course not. Soon it spread to other parts of Europe. And later on, the whole world, including us, we have undergone that process of industrialization. We don't call it Industrial Revolution now, but industrialization that knocked on, or we are undergoing that process. There was a shift in the site of production. Where was production carried out earlier? What was the nature of production before the revolution, before the Industrial Revolution? What was the main economic activity? Agriculture. Agriculture. So it was the fields, the farmsteads, and for some little items, the homes, which were the sites of production. Now, what was the new site of production? The factories. So it gave rise to the factory system basically. What kind of goods were being produced? Unique or standardized? Standardized. So, standardization of output was there. So, it's not one single white shirt being produced. Tens and thousands of same type of shirts are produced at one go in batches in a factory. Yes or no? So, standardization of output and a system of mass production took shape in England first and then later other parts of Europe. What do you do? Now these factories, they work 24/7. So say when the whole of Manchester is closed, what do? Do you stop your factories? Where? Absolutely. So there would be a search for new markets and expansion of trade and commerce. Yes or no? This also gave a further boost to what? Where will you go for newer virgin markets? To the colonies. Why did the British come to India? Right, in search of cheap labor, raw material and virgin markets. So colonialism got a further boost thanks to the Industrial Revolution. How was the life of the working class? What happened to the standard of living as a result of the Industrial Revolution? What is your sense? Did it lead to an improvement in the standard of living or decline? What good all these goodies being produced if it leads to a decline? Did it lead to better lives or worse? Basically those who had the purchasing power, for them there was a significant improvement in the quality of life. They now had never seen before kind of goodies that money could buy. But for a very large chunk of the working class population, the living conditions and the working conditions were quite poor. Quite poor. Did the Industrial Revolution impact only the economy or other aspects of social life as well? Like what? Literature, political system, I heard. How was the political system impacted? Yes, how?
They have money, they got seat in the parliament.
Those with money got a seat in the parliament. Okay. Sorry. Rise of the capitalists. Industrialists influenced the parliament, all right. Sorry? How did the family get affected? Turn by turn, please. Division of the family. That sounds so heart-wrenching. We have another word for that. Family nuclearization, yes. Yes. Rise of the middle class. Absolutely. Please note down. So, the Industrial Revolution impacted not only the economy, but also various other areas of social life. It led to the nuclearization of the family. The family changed from extended or joint family to nuclear. Why? Why would the family nuclearize? Yes, so there was a shift from rural areas to urban areas. In a feudal agrarian economy, people stay jointly. So if I am a farmer, okay, with 10 acres of land, then I have 5 sons. They will of course stay with me on my farmstead and be the working hands. Right? So the father and the 5 sons tend to stay together in a agrarian feudal kind of a setup. But in an industrial economy, what happens? The workers move to the location where their skills are in demand. Right? So you need to be mobile. Now if I am a son, right, with 5 brothers and an ailing parents, is it easier to move along with the whole Kumbha? Ailing parents, 5 brothers, their wives, their children and 20, 30 children? Or me, my dependent wife and my 2-4 children? The smaller unit is simply more mobile. Right? That is why, so one son would go to one place where his skills are in demand, the other to another factory and so on and so forth. In other words, it led to family nuclearization. The class system also underwent a transformation. Before I come to the class system, so there was large-scale migration from rural areas to the factory centers, and it led to a wave of urbanization. Right? Many new urban areas sprang up. Wherever these factories were established, they emerged as urban areas. Yes or no? In these urban areas, what kind of places would the industrial workers live in? Palatial bungalows? In the slum areas. So there was development of slums in the urban areas. And these slums what were the living conditions in these slums? Quite awesome? No, they weren't, of course. Right? Definitionally, slums have pathetic living conditions. So new kind of problems were faced by the industrial working class in the urban slums. Problems of poor hygiene and sanitation, inadequate resources in general, overcrowding, a sense of isolation. You know, you are being uprooted from the villages where you guys have stayed since several generations, coming to these new city centers, where you are commingling with people from diverse backgrounds. You don't know them, you don't speak their language possibly. Or you belong to a different religion, a different skin color. There is the problem of urban pollution. New diseases are cropping up. And what about the work conditions? Were they pretty awesome? What's wrong with you? I mean, what's wrong with the work conditions? Very long working hours, absolutely. As long as 18 hours a day. As if they are UPSC aspirants. Very long work hours, poor pay, hazard of industrial accidents. You know, machineries were new things being employed. Kabhi haath kat gaya, kabhi paun. New classes emerged in society. Which new classes emerged? Sorry? Earlier, which classes existed? Wait, let me try to figure out. Earlier in a feudal agrarian setup, you have the lords who own the lands and the serfs who till the land broadly. Right? This old class structure gave way to a new one in the industrial economy that emerged due to the Industrial Revolution. What were the new classes? Use simpler terminology. Capitalist, we don't know yet what is capital. Factory owners and factory workers. Simply. Factory owners and factory workers. And how were their relations? Were they pals? No, they weren't very pally. There was a general climate of industrial conflict and strife. The workers felt an exploited lot, underpaid and underfed. The capitalists felt the workers are lazy bums. Now the working class, given their pathetic work conditions and living conditions, they started to get organized in order to increase their bargaining power vis-a-vis the factory owners. And thus emerged the organized working class movement, or what we call the trade union movement. The trade union movement first began in certain sectors of the economy separately. So you had the textile mills workers, their unions got formed. Then dockyard workers, mine workers, SS separately. And then they started joining forces, joining hands to, increase their kind of bargaining power vis-a-vis the industrialists. And this working class movement or trade union movement culminated in the establishment of which political party? The Labour Party, right, as the party to represent the interests of the working class or labor in the political system. Even today, Labour Party is one of the two main contending parties in Great Britain. So it led to political changes. How did the education system change, if it did? The factories that were being established, they required an educated and skilled manpower. Earlier, the education system was restricted or confined to a select few. This industrial revolution and the demand for skilled and educated workers led to the emergence of a mass-based education system. New ideologies emerged and gained popularity, like communism. Particularly whose writings? Karl Marx. His writings greatly invoked interest and popularized this notion of communism. Yes? I'm being asked to repeat about the education system, so here we go. What I had said, that the industrial economy requires an educated and qualified kind of a workforce. They should be skilled, qualified, with varying, capabilities. Therefore, the education system changed. Earlier, education was restricted to a few, but now a mass-based education system started taking shape. Tell me, friends, what is the impact of technology on employment? Simply, what you have is machinery being employed in the process of production. Earlier, the things that were being done by human beings would now be done by machines. What would be its effect on employment? Does the employment of technology lead to a reduction in, does the shift to technology lead to a reduction in employment or contribute to unemployment? Yes. That was a very widely prevalent fear even that time, and hence emerged the Luddite movement. The Luddite movement. The Luddite movement was led by who? Captain Ludd, and hence the name. Ludd Sahab. Who was this Captain Ludd? He did not exist. He was an imaginary figure, like Robin Hood, but widely popular. Massive participation by the working class. Basically, what this Luddite movement believed, that it is these machines which are taking away our jobs. Simply, if earlier 100 workers were producing something, now one machine will do that, then 99 workers will get unemployed. So, this movement did what? They sabotaged industrial machinery. They would organize in gangs. In the night, they would sabotage, tod-phod, industrial machinery. That is this evil machinery which is taking away our jobs. That was the rationale. Do you agree with this assessment that technology deployment leads to unemployment? Please appreciate, friends, in the long run, whenever technology does displace human labor, no doubt, but it also leads to the creation of new kinds of employment opportunities. technology requires its own kind of new skill sets to be acquired and kind of deployed. Consider computerization. In India also in 1990s, when computers were being introduced in government banks, there was massive opposition from government employees, the bank employees. They felt if so many computers are put, then what will humans do? All the clerks, etc., tellers, they will become jobless. So that fear is quite popular wherever technology is applied. But it also creates many new opportunities. So the computerization, now we all have computers, laptops or desktops or whatever. Has it resulted in new employment opportunities? Yes, so many. The possibilities are endless. You need hardware technicians, software developers, website programmers, coders and whatnot. I'm not even aware, like YouTubers and whatnot. Any number? Okay. In any case, point is that there was a fear of the employment of machinery in the production process, and that led to a backlash or a reaction of sorts by the working class. So all these transformative changes that were taking place, please appreciate the Industrial Revolution and the French Revolution combinedly. They literally led to the emergence of a very new kind of a society. Very new kind of a society. The old society was characterized by a feudal agrarian economy, a joint family system, preponderance of religion, elitist kind of an education system, a rigid class structure. Rigid meaning you can't change your class very easily. If you're born in the third estate, you die there. A monarchical form of government, and all these were replaced by a very, very new, different kind of an arrangement. Earlier society was rural, now predominantly urban. Earlier if government was monarchical, now a shift towards republicanism. Earlier the powers of the church were massive, now greatly curtailed. The feudal system stood abolished and you had new classes of factory workers and owners in their place. It was as if a completely new kind of society had emerged from the womb of the old. And it was to study these transformative changes that the intellectuals of that era, they took upon themselves to study them, analyze them, and thus emerged the discipline of sociology. Are you with me, friends? You want me to dictate? Likho. The emergence of the discipline of sociology. The emergence of the discipline of sociology owes itself I'll just clarify that, owes itself to the socio-political conditions that were prevalent in Europe during the 18th and 19th centuries. During the 18th and 19th centuries. Full stop. The French and industrial revolutions the French and industrial revolutions had the combined effect of giving birth to the modern society. Full stop. Next para. The French Revolution significantly affected the nature of the state, comma, its relationship with the church, and spawned the ideals of the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Spawned means gave birth, kind of, or resulted in. The Industrial Revolution. Full stop डाल के the Industrial Revolution led to the emergence of the capitalist industrial economy, characterized by mass production, comma, a significant rise in productivity, skill specialization, and a complex form of division of labor. Full stop. It also led to family nuclearization, a shift after comma, family nuclearization, comma, a shift from rural to urban areas, comma, emergence of new classes, and increase in international trade and commerce. Full stop. Consequently, the traditional social structure collapsed. and made way for a new one. Traditional social structure collapsed and made way for a new one. These transformative changes were complex, multidimensional, and difficult to make sense of. Full stop. Old patterns of living and traditional modes of thought now seemed outdated. Old patterns of living and traditional modes of thought now seemed outdated. Full stop. The sense of security and continuity associated with the old world meaning the pre-modern society, associated with the old world was replaced by an unseen uncertainty. Full stop. New social problems arose. The industrial towns and cities. I repeat, new social problems arose. The industrial towns and cities were overpopulated. The working and living conditions of the workers were poor. Industrial conflict was rampant. What do you mean by industrial conflict? Industrial conflict was rampant. Rampant means widespread. What do you mean by industrial conflict? The conflict between management and the workers. Right? Industrial conflict was rampant, large-scale pollution and lack of sanitation characterized urban slums. There were new health hazards. A rise in crime. And glaring inequalities. Sorry? Okay, I'll repeat. New social problems arose. The industrial towns and cities were overpopulated, suffering from a resource crunch, pollution. There was urban pollution. Industrial conflict was rampant. Rise in crime rates, glaring inequalities. क्या बचा? And etc. ठीक है. Full stop. Next para. It was to study and analyze these transformative changes. It was to study and analyze these transformative changes associated with the modernization of Europe. Associated with the modernization of Europe. In a systematic and scientific manner. In a systematic and scientific manner. That the discipline of sociology emerged. I repeat, it was to study these transformative changes taking place in European society, associated with the modernization of Europe, that in a systematic and scientific manner, that the discipline of sociology emerged. All right? You know, friends, it is no coincidence that most of the early sociologists hailed either from France or England. Germany is Weber onwards. Comte, कहाँ का? French fellow. Saint Simon, Comte's intellectual predecessor. कहाँ का? France का. Durkheim, France. Shri Karl Marx, कहीं का नहीं, nobody accepted him as such, but he spent much of his life in England. And he was analyzing the conditions of the working class in England. तो लिखो, nearly all the early social thinkers from Comte to Durkheim from Saint Simon to Karl Marx were keenly engaged. Other names you know, so I wrote only one. You know, na? You know Comte fellow. You know Marx fellow. What other? Durkheim I mentioned. Were keenly engaged. Yes? We will discuss paper 2 is all India. Sorry? There were. Okay? But we will be discussing in paper 2. So we'll hold that thought for now. Because the emergence of the discipline of sociology took place particularly in the European context. Okay, there was the development, we will be talking about the development of sociology in India, okay, but that is for the second paper for now. We will, paper 2 is all India. I completely empathize with your, this thing. There are many, Okay, we begin with the likes of Ghure, okay, and many others, SN Seal. We'll be talking in paper 2 at some length. This I was slightly later, okay. But anyways, chaliye, coming back to the Goras, okay. Where were we? Were keenly engaged in analyzing the social conditions of the emergent modern industrial society, in Europe and its attendant social problems या concerns, attendant social concerns. Right? Chaliye, moving on. Now tell me, did these revolutions take place out of thin air? In the sense, please appreciate these revolutions. You know, when you use the word revolution, there's a sense of urgency. As if, you know, it happened quickly. Yeah, this is that word revolution somehow invokes that feeling. You know, it was very quick and suddenly things happened. But please appreciate, revolutions don't take place without a context. A society needs to undergo possibly several times years of preparation for the occurrence of the revolution. You think it was out of thin air that somebody thought, yeah, what is this monarchy? You know, let us now replace it with a republican form of government. It isn't easy. Why? Please imagine a system like monarchy, which has been well entrenched and established for generations over generations, several centuries. It acquires a legitimacy of its own. Any system which is in place for too long. Today, do we question democracy? No, we don't. It is a given. So any system which remains for a while, it acquires a force of its own, it acquires a great legitimacy of its own. To challenge the authority of religion, of the monarchy. Are you with me? Which these revolutions did. Did somebody one fine day think that why are you guys making by hand? Let me create something called a machinery. No. So revolutions occur when there is a conducive intellectual climate that will legitimize, justify the change that the revolutions propose. Are you with me? So the European society underwent that, or there was an ideological legitimization, foundation laid for the occurrence of the revolutions over a period spanning 100 to 200 years in Europe before the revolutions. That period is known as, anybody? Sorry? Not the Renaissance, after the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment. Enlightenment was what? This slide is wrong. Wrong in the sense, this dabba should be here and this here. Okay, so make that correction. The Enlightenment took place before the Renaissance, and the Renaissance predates. Okay. We will talk about USA tomorrow. We will talk about the development of sociology in USA tomorrow, but your question is somewhat misguided because it was Europe which emerged as the center, or which is credited with the emergence of the discipline of sociology, though certain developments later took place in USA. We'll talk tomorrow about that US aspect. So if it was in 1838 that Comte coined the term sociology, the conditions for it were created by the French and the industrial revolutions in the 18th century. These revolutions did not take place in an intellectual vacuum. The intellectual foundations for the occurrence of the French and industrial revolutions were laid down during the period of enlightenment in Europe. In other words, some, philosophies, theories came out during the enlightenment period which justified the revolutions. Are you with me? Some scholars and philosophers, they offered radical theories which challenged the legitimacy of monarchy. And that is why the French Revolution could take place. Are you with me? We'll be discussing in detail. I'm just giving you an overview. So the intellectual moral foundation for the occurrence of the world revolutions was created by during the Enlightenment period. How dare these philosophers outline radical theories or philosophies which questioned monarchy, etc., or feudalism? For that, the European society as a whole underwent changes during the Renaissance period. There was a change in mindset in Europe which made it possible for these thinkers during the Enlightenment to come up with radical ideas. And Renaissance was literally a 3-4 centuries long period. So no revolution is without a preparedness. The society is prepared for centuries and centuries. The period in European history before the Renaissance is called the Dark Ages. No. Before the Renaissance, the period is called Dark Ages or the Dark Age, roughly from the 5th to the 15th century. Why is it called the Dark Ages? Because this is a period of decadence, stagnation in Europe. Decadence and stagnation, there was no cultural, productivity. Things were very stagnant. There was no rich cultural output in art or literature or whatever. There was overall a climate of gloom, and people were caught in a cobweb of superstition and ignorance, as it were. Of the Dark Ages, roughly from 5th to the 15th century. Now the discipline of sociology may be quite new, friends, having been established, or the word itself having been coined less than 200 years back. But its roots are very old. In fact, they can be traced to more than 2000 years back, going further back from the Dark Ages period to the period of the ancient Greek philosophers. More than 2000 years back, friends, ancient philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, they were grappling with some of the same questions that modern sociology today is trying to address. They were writing about some of the same themes that we contemporary sociologists, modern sociologists from Comte till today, that we are discussing. And why only the West, the philosophers and writers in the East? Confucius in China, Kautilya here, or the Indica by Megasthenes. They are rich with analysis of different aspects of social life. So, the writers, scholars and philosophers in both the East and the West more than 2000 years ago were cogitating on various aspects of social life. They were writing about the institution of marriage, the nature of politics and governance, the relationship between different social classes, the role of education in society, the place of women. The theme of continuity versus change. All of these, even modern sociology is quite preoccupied with. लिखो ना. Yes. Yes, you can say that in the sense, social analysis, writings on various aspects of social life, they are of antiquity. They are very old, more than 2000 years back. But sociology as an academic discipline, using the scientific method, that is something which is a 19th century phenomenon. Huh? So a Comte or a Saint Simon, they can equally be termed as philosophers, or a Marx for that matter. They can be termed equally as philosophers as sociologists. Huh? In fact, Comte's book, wherein he outlines his method, the scientific method for sociology, is termed A Course in Positive Philosophy. Yes. The immediate context for the emergence, for those who could not hear her question is that why do we trace the emergence of sociology from the French and industrial revolutions and not prior? The immediate trigger or context for the emergence of sociology was the modernization of Europe, brought about as a result of these revolutions. B, we do not stop at the revolutions, and that is precisely what we are doing right now. We are saying that though these were the immediate trigger, but there is a longer history behind it which we need to explore, and that is precisely what we are doing. In fact, we are going on to say that even if sociology is a new discipline which sprung up in the 19th century, the roots of social inquiry are more than 2000 years ago. Okay? So, various aspects, various social themes, aspects of social life have been discussed threadbare by philosophers, lawgivers, men of religion, politics, economists, political scientists since thousands of years. Jumping now to the Renaissance period and how that is linked to the emergence of sociology. I'm being asked to repeat the name of Comte's book. The book is titled A Course in Positive Philosophy.
And also the line, like outline in sentences.
I said in this book he basically outlined the method to be used in sociology, which is the scientific method. Okay, we'll be discussing this later. I just mentioned in passing because, in the context of his question. that whether they can be termed as philosophers or something. Coming to the Renaissance period. Renaissance was a period in European history from about 14th to the 17th centuries. What do you mean by the word Renaissance, bachcho? Yes, the word literally means rebirth. And from where do we know that? Because we have had our own Renaissance, Indian Renaissance. Yeah, the one with Raja Ram Mohan Rai and his ilk. Yes, absolutely. Right? So, rebirth implies what? Punarjanam. That something was alive earlier, it had somewhat died or something, become subdued, and then once again it is springing back to life. That is what rebirth implies. What is that something? What is it that is being rebirthed? Taking another birth. Knowledge. See, Indian Renaissance was what? Rebirth of what? Ancient Indian knowledge. Go back to the Vedas. Right? Likewise, the European Renaissance, in fact, our Renaissance is named after theirs. Theirs is the original Renaissance. Right? The European Renaissance was a rebirth of knowledge. Classical European knowledge. Their classical books written in ancient Greek or Latin. So they revisited those, and there was a flowering, cultural flowering during the Renaissance period in Europe. Cultural flowering in the sense, in various aspects of culture, art, literature, poetry, drama, architecture. Okay? There was a flowering of sorts. Flowering matlab khil gaye, literally. Meaning there was a lot of activities and growth, a spurt in various aspects of culture. And there was a lot of positive, remarkable kind of output being produced. You will understand the remarkableness, if there is such a word, of the output of this period when I share with you some of the key Renaissance figures. Like, okay, so this took place in Europe and it was centered in Italy. Okay? Have you heard of these people? Yes. Do we know them all? Shakespeare, we are all well aware. How do we know him? He's a Renaissance figure. See, these were, people working across fields of art, literature, music, drama, architecture. What do we know Shakespeare for? Tell me his works. Sorry? Macbeth. Romeo and Juliet, even an unpad knows, yeah? Merchant of Venice. Right? These are some of his dramas or works. What do we know Michelangelo for? Which? The statue of David, if you recollect. Google it, you will find, no? What do we know Leonardo for? Titanic? Mona Lisa, huh? Yes. This was also saw a lot of activity in the realm of religion and science. Voyages and discoveries. People like Copernicus, Newton, Galileo Galilei. Yes, Vasco da Gama. What are these guys known for? Their scientific discoveries. This guy Newton, I really know, he gave those 3 laws. Yeah, what about Galileo? He basically, I think he also kind of vouched for the heliocentric theory. Yeah, Kepler was also of the time period. Possibly. I'm not 100% sure, but presumably. Some of these remarkable scientists. And then you had these guys, Vasco da Gama and Columbus, known for their voyages and discoveries. Yes. Both of them sailed for India, one landed or discovered the route to America from Europe, another landed here. These voyages that these guys undertook, the likes of Vasco da Gama and Columbus, why did they undertake? And these voyages were extremely risky. Okay, the naval technology that time in Europe was very, not very this thing. Okay, and there was a lot of risk associated with these long drawn voyages, risk and uncertainty. Yet they undertook them. Why? Yes, basically it was Italy which was monopolizing the land route of trade between Europe and Asia and Africa. So these guys wanted to find a way around the other countries which were challenging Italy, okay, like Portugal, very importantly. So they financed these trips or voyages of discovery for new sea routes to Asia and Africa. It was in this context that these voyages were undertaken. And it led to a commercial revolution. Commercial revolution. So with these new sea routes being discovered to distant lands, with riches like Indian spices, etc., there was a massive expansion of trade and commerce. There was also establishment, a firm establishment of the banking system. Company as an organizational form, that got formed. Today we have companies everywhere. Company is a separate legal entity. They began to be formed during this period. So basically, one person or one individual taking that risk would be too much. So a lot of people will pool or buy shares as we do today. Okay? Or a stake in that venture. Many of these companies would get charters ensuring monopoly of trade, including which? The East India Company. So it led to an expansion of trade and commerce, what we call the commercial revolution, and was accompanied by a banking revolution, an establishment of the company form of organization. What about these guys, Copernicus, Newton, Galileo, kind of people, or the developments in science? It also led to a scientific revolution of sorts. So these guys came up with new ideas, interpretations of the phenomena under study. See, all phenomena that happens around us, social phenomena, natural phenomena, they have been studied since ages. Explanations have been offered. Even before the scientific revolution, explanations were offered for various phenomena. Whether it is childbirth or death, whether it is crop, bounty of crop or crop failure, whether it is rain or drought. But what were the kind of explanations that were offered earlier? Sorry? Yes, they were in terms of, being attributed to divinity. Right? So if I have a bounty of crop, why is it? Or if there is bountiful rain? Because Indradev is happy, simply. Or if there is drought, Indradev is not. If there is childbirth, Bhagwan ki kripa hai. And if there is death, Bhagwan ko pyare ho gaye. So all explanations, they were in terms of, all phenomena were understood in terms of theological explanations or God-related. Simply theology means, God-related, religion-related kind of explanations. But now we had a new source of knowledge. So, which was science, right? And this new source of knowledge, the scientists, they challenged whose authority, or dented whose authority? That of the church. So the separation of the church and state you see several years down the line with the French Revolution. The foundations were laid. The denting, the chipping at the authority of church was done with the scientific revolution during this period. Are you with me? They questioned the legitimacy of the claims of the religious authority. What was the greatest contribution of the scientific revolution? These are some illustrative. The compass. Okay, any other? The dissection of the human body. The printing press. Revolution of Earth. Okay, basically the heliocentric theory. Earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. Medical facilities. It is contended that the biggest contribution of the age was not this or that scientific discovery, not the compass or the heliocentric theory, but it was the discovery of the scientific method itself. The scientific method was kind of discovered and popularized during this period. And that was its biggest contribution. And what is this scientific method? Broadly, we'll be discussing in detail later. That I can give you, Indradev. What is scientific knowledge based upon? Empirical data. Absolutely. It has a basis in empirical data. And that was the biggest contribution of this period or the scientific revolution. The Renaissance, friends, was characterized by three chief characteristics of the Renaissance period. Humanism. What do you mean by humanism? Humanism means a focus on the human condition. What do we mean by that? Earlier also, or before the Renaissance, songs were being sung, literature was being penned, poems were being written, statues were being built, paintings were being painted. But what was the central theme? God. King only as an incarnation of God. But it was God, divinity, spiritual. During the Renaissance period, there was a shift away from God or divinity as the center of attention and analysis to the human being. So man became the focus. So when Shakespeare is writing a play, whether it is a Hamlet or a Romeo and Juliet, who are the main characters? Human beings. Another important characteristic was realism. What do you mean by realism? Sorry? What really exists? What is the opposite of realism? Idealism. Idealism is how things should be. Realism is how things are. So basically a realistic portrayal of things as they are, not as they should be. When Shakespeare writes a Hamlet, does he talk about an ideal situation? Or does he talk about real human emotions of love and treachery and betrayal? It's not an ideal kind of a situation. Palace intrigue. Are you with me? You know, there was a scholar, a philosopher named Machiavelli. Have you heard the name? We have an English word after his name now, Machiavellian. When somebody is very cunning and scheming, we call him Machiavellian. So he wrote a book titled The Prince. The Prince, in which he talks about how should a ruler be. Ruler, the person who is in command. He made a very revealing statement there. He says, it is best if the ruler is both loved and feared. It is best if the ruler is both loved and feared. But since the two rarely go together, it's difficult, no, for us to love and fear the same person. Since the two rarely go together, or it is difficult for the two to go together, it is preferable that he be what? Feared than loved. So he's not talking about an idealistic, kind of notion. Plato long back, he had also given the nature of a ruler. How a ruler should be. He said a ruler should be a visionary, honest, thinking of the welfare of the people. All things ideal. But here was a realistic portrayal. Machiavelli was West ka Chanakya. He would argue that a ruler should use Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed in order to secure and, keep power. Otherwise, he will be displaced. So that's a realistic portrayal of political life. That is the nature of political life. If you need to survive, you need to be ruthless. You need to be cunning. And the like. Are you with me? So he was not talking about an ideal kind of a situation, but a realistic one. And finally, empiricism. Empiricism means what? That the only source of true knowledge is empirical data. Let facts speak for themselves. So you can acquire knowledge only when you see it, feel it literally. Otherwise you don't believe it. You don't believe what is handed down knowledge, what is told to you by others. You collect data, and that is what you consider as sacrosanct or a source of knowledge. The scientific method with its emphasis on experimentation, mathematization. That is what this period was characterized by. Leonardo da Vinci, for instance, now he was a polymath. In the sense, he was an all-rounder in today's lingo. Right? So he was not only a painter, he was also an architect and this or that. A physicist and a biologist and a doctor and whatnot. He used to pay grave diggers, grave robbers. So there was a job profile that time, grave robbers. The human body was considered as inviolable, sacred. Okay, so how do you derive knowledge about the functioning of the human body? So he would pay people to rob graves, dig out bodies and hand it over to him so that he could conduct experiments. He could kind of dissect those bodies, those cadavers, and find out, okay, here is the liver and this is how the heart looks, or this is how the nerve is going. So that was the emphasis on empirical data or facts as the basis of knowledge. Are you with me? Now, this Renaissance period, one way it affected the development of sociology. We aren't concerned about the history. It's not a world history class. You don't expect a question on what were the characteristics of the Renaissance. That's not what we are here for. We are concerned about how this contributed in any way to the emergence of sociology. One was, of course, the Renaissance prepared European society for the Enlightenment era philosophies, and those paved the way for the French and Industrial Revolutions, which transformed Europe into a modern society. To study that modernization of Europe, sociology emerged. More directly, when sociology emerged as a discipline, what was the focus of attention? Divinity or human beings? We study human societies, human relationships, human interconnections and interactions. We study society as it is or as it ought to be? As it is, or realism. And what was the method employed by the early sociologists? The scientific method. All of which can be considered a gift of the Renaissance period. Yes or no? The pauses so that you may summarize if you need to. Regarding what kind of questions can be asked from this segment, Emergence of Sociology, typically we do not get direct questions on the impact of Renaissance or Enlightenment. Okay? What kind of questions we get? A, how did the French and Industrial Revolutions, you will get on the weekend anyways, how did the French and Industrial Revolutions contribute to the emergence of sociology? Or how did the modernization of Europe lead to the emergence of sociology? Thirdly, what were the intellectual influences on early sociology? Okay, broadly, or associated with modernity, modernization, how that is associated with emergence of sociology. So, if there is a question on French and Industrial Revolutions, impact on emergence of sociology, you will be writing whatever was discussed till then. If there is a question on modernization of Europe and emergence of sociology, then you will also touch upon Renaissance and Enlightenment. All of them combinedly, the scientific revolutions, the French and Industrial, all of them combinedly led to the modernization of Europe. Okay? The trend, or till now what we see is they have not seemed to have asked directly or about Enlightenment or Renaissance. Okay? But no promises there. Okay? Chaliye, moving to the Enlightenment period. Enlightenment was a period in European history during the 17th and 18th centuries. During this period in Europe, there was a lot of intellectual ferment. When I say intellectual ferment, what it means is basically that a lot of, new radical kind of ideas and philosophies were being outlined that challenged the old notions, old modes of thinking, or the established modes of thinking. The Enlightenment era writings, and it was this Enlightenment period which provided the intellectual foundation, the justification for the French and Industrial Revolutions. The Enlightenment era spirit was best captured by Immanuel Kant, who described enlightenment simply as, and I quote, Kant described enlightenment as the freedom to use what? One's own intelligence. The freedom to use one's own intelligence. You know, another phrase for the Enlightenment period that is very frequently used is, it's also called the age of reason. The age of reason. What do you mean when you call it the age of reason or the freedom to use one's own intelligence? It simply means you do not have to necessarily succumb, or you do not have to necessarily accept what is told to you. Apply your own mind. Think rationally. Question, very importantly, those in authority. Nothing is sacrosanct. Nothing is something which cannot be questioned. Everything is open to debate and question. Whom to question? Or whom? So whose authority was being rejected? Religion, organized religion or church. Political masters, right? The thekedars of knowledge, the custodians of knowledge. Point is, you don't simply have to accept something as true simply because it is told to you by the powers that be, by your social superiors, or by those in authority. Apply your own mind, think rationally, and then you may accept or reject something. People were now free to think. That was the emphasis of the Enlightenment period. The Enlightenment period, some of the theories, writings that came out of this period, we can understand the nature of this enlightenment through these writings. Something called the social contract theory. And these are some of the scholars of the social contract theory: Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. What is this social? Now these three, they were writing separately, and their writings, there are important differences in their writings, but in general, all of them are social contract theorists. So I'll be explaining social contract theory through the writings of Hobbes, very briefly. Okay? Hobbes wrote a book titled The Leviathan. The Leviathan. What does Leviathan refer to? A big, powerful, monstrous entity. A big and powerful, monstrous entity. That's what the word Leviathan refers to. Now, he used this title for his book. Basically, he was referring to the state or government. The state or government. So, in this book, The Leviathan, Hobbes is exploring the origins of government authority. Origins of government authority or state. Why did the state or government authority, any sort of political authority or rules and regulations, why and how did they emerge? So he says that to understand that, let us go back to a stage in human history when there was no state, no government, no rules, no regulations. And he calls that stage in human history as the state of nature. State of nature. Alright, long back period when there was no government. Pre-government days in human history. He calls it the state of nature. What is your sense, friends? In the state of nature, how was our life? Bluntly, was it good or was it bad? When we were living without government, was it preferable or worse? How many of you think it was bad? Life in the state of nature. And you are all quite on the mark. Or at least Hobbes is in agreement with you. Hobbes writes, life of man in the state of nature, life of man in the state of nature is solitary, akelapan, poor, garibi, nasty, which is nasty, brutish and short. Life of man in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. Choti, so short. It is literally a situation of the war of each against everyone. People live in perpetual fear of violence and death. Imagine we are that pre-state, pre-government kind of tribe. We live by plucking berries or, killing game, meat, having meat in the jungles. And there is no authority, there is no government, there is no tribal chief amongst us. Then what happens? He kills a wild buffalo and then he's sleeping by the night. I go and kill him and take the buffalo. There is nothing stopping me. The next day I pluck berries for my partner and myself, but then she comes along and kills me and takes my berries. There is simply no authority, no rules and regulations, nothing stopping. It is literally Matsya Raj, or might is right. So we are all continuously living in fear of each other. What if she kills me? What if she snatches from me? Yes or no? So what do? We are all quite, living in this state of perpetual anxiety. So we want to have some peace of mind. So what do? We all think that this guy, he looks pretty reasonable. Yeah? Balanced, fair. So let us all do one thing. We all surrender some of our freedoms, some of our powers in his favor. In other words, tomorrow if there is a dispute between, you and I, to whom this buffalo belongs, who decides? We go to him. And whatever he says, we both abide by it. We all abide by it. So who is he? He is the first government or tribal chief. Thus, government originated as a result of a social contract. It was a contract amongst the members of the society, which we all voluntarily entered into, surrendering some of our powers and freedoms in his favor. Yes or no? That is why it's called a social contract theory. Government or state emerged as a result of a social contract or a contract amongst the members of the society. Clear? Will you start getting antsy as the clock strikes 8:30? You look ready to run. Bear with me for a bit. So point is that government arose as a result of a social contract that the members of the society voluntarily entered into. For whose sake? Their own sake. Now this theory, please appreciate, it directly challenged which theory? The divine theory of kingship. Social contract theory challenge the divine theory of kingship, not kinship, kingship. Means what? How was political rule legitimized earlier? What was the basis of, or the justification for a dynasty or a particular king ruling? They claimed some sort of divine sanction, that they have been chosen by God, or that they are the descendants of God. हम सूर्यवंशी हैं, हम चंद्रवंशी हैं, हम अग्निवंशी हैं. Even in our society that used to happen. Or they would claim, to be God incarnates, like a lot of Egyptian pharaohs and all, right? Or if you've seen that movie 300, yes, sir. That kind of a fellow, Xerxes was his name, weird character. Yeah, he claimed to be a God incarnate. Point is, some sort of divine sanction was sought to justify or legitimize political authority of the rulers. That simply we are the chosen ones. And that is why you must obey. How can you disobey? Because then it will be a sin against God. But now what did these social contract theorists say? That there is no divine sanction for political rule. Instead, government is a result of a contract amongst the members of the society. Hello. Sorry? Hello? भैया कुछ हेल्प करो. These children are getting too happy. देखना ये लगेगा इसे. इधर लगेगा. हेलो. Hello. Guys, I'm back. So, where were we? Yeah, so the social contract theory challenged the divine theory of kingship. And what is the implication of this social contract theory? Sorry? So we chose him. Why did we choose him? For our benefit, not for his. So if he is not up to the mark, then what can we do? We can replace him. We can take away, the power is ours. We can take it away from him and vest it in her. And this became the basis of republican and democratic forms of government. The power vests with who? The people. It is the people who surrender some of their power in favor of the rulers. So the rulers derive their authority. The source of legitimacy is the will of the people. Yes or no? That is precisely what the social contract theory implied. And thus the French Revolution became possible. Are you with me? In fact, not Leonardo DiCaprio, Napoleon Bonaparte had said that had there been no Rousseau, there would have been no French Revolution. So Rousseau was the ideological fount. He laid the ideological foundations for the occurrence of the French Revolution. All right? You had guys like Voltaire and Montesquieu. I'll just briefly mention. Voltaire says what? He used to write in, satire. Voltaire once said, Voltaire. Voltaire said, if there were no God, the ruling classes would create one. What is he implying? Simply that organized religion somehow benefits the ruling classes. And who would talk similarly later on? Which sociology, which stream or which thinker? Karl Marx. Karl Marx wrote very critically against religion, right? Talking about how it basically helps the ruling classes. Yes. Montesquieu. We must have heard of his name. Should have. What concept he gave? Separation of powers. That the powers of the government should be divided into 3 different bodies or persons. One to make the laws, other to execute it, and the third to adjudicate upon disputes. Okay, legislature, executive, and judiciary. Again, we find that quite popular amongst modern democratic governments. Yes or no? Last but definitely not the least, Sri Adam Smith. Which book he wrote? Wealth of Nations. That's, shortened. His actual name is quite wrong, the book's name. An inquiry into the causes and consequences of the wealth of nations. But if you write that much, you lose a lot of space in the answer sheet, so you simply write Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith, his writings laid the foundations, the moral and intellectual foundations for the emergence of the free market economy. The free market economy, or what we call the laissez-faire economy. Yes. Okay, I'll write here. Laissez-faire economy or free market economy. Which simply states what? That governments should not interfere in the workings of the economy. If market forces of demand and supply, they are permitted free play, it will lead to optimal utilization of the resources of the society. Tell me, friends, is pursuing one's own self-interest, is human greed a bad thing or a good thing? Morally, is it preferable to be self-interested and greedy, or to be altruistic and philanthropic in one's orientation? Should we be thinking about ourselves or about others? Adam Smith's writings created the foundation for, and what is our behavior in a capitalist economy? Self-centric. Please write down a sentence. Adam Smith ji ने कहा है, it is not from the benevolence, it is not from the benevolence means large-heartedness, udarta, a sense of charity. It is not from the benevolence of the baker, the butcher, or the, no, sorry, one sec. The baker, the butcher, or the brewer it is not from the benevolence of the baker, the butcher, or the brewer that we expect our daily dinner. That we expect our daily dinner, comma. Tell me, friends, you guys are living in Delhi, far off from your places. You get a lot of services at your doorstep. You possibly get grocery delivered at your doorstep. Why does he do so? Because he's concerned about you. That Bitya has come from so far off, and she's already so tense with all the UPSC thing going on. Let me ensure she has eggs and butter ready at her doorstep. Is he concerned about you? Is he doing it out of a sense of charity? Is he doing it because he is a big philanthropist? Then why is he doing it? For his own sake. Why? Because he knows if he doesn't provide you those services, then who will? You will take your business to the next guy. Yes or no? And he loses. So he will provide you doorstep services. He will provide you quality goods at the best possible price. If he is pursuing his self-interest, does it mean that he will be cheating you? Will he be cheating you? No. He will be providing you the best possible services, good quality products that he can, while still making a profit. Why? Because he benefits. If you are a satisfied customer, because he gets repeat business. So likho, it is not from the benevolence of the baker, the butcher, the brewer that we expect a daily dinner. Who are these guys? Baker is the guy who bakes bread. Butcher is the guy who, the kasai, the guy who provides you meat, and brewer is the guy who makes wine. It's an Angrezi context, so I'm just clarifying. Basically the service providers who help you, prepare dinner. Not from their benevolence that we expect our daily dinner, comma, but from their concern for their own or their self-interest. For their concern for their own interest. Yes or no? Point is, friends, it's not immoral or socially reprehensible, condemnable to pursue one's self-interest. If each of us pursues our own self-interest, who benefits? The society as a whole benefits. We'll try to be the best at our jobs. Yes or no? We will become better or more efficient. We will be providing better goods and services to the other guy in the pursuit of our own interest. As a whole, the society will benefit. Yes or no? And that provided the moral foundation or justification for the rise of industrial capitalism, for the occurrence of the industrial revolution. Why were these guys making these new inventions and machineries? For the benefit of the workers. These poor guys are toiling hard. No. They were doing it so that they could patent them or earn a huge profit. And they were driven by self-interest. But in the process, what happened? The society at large benefited. There was technological progress. There was increase in productivity. So many things. Yes or no? So it was these Enlightenment era scholars and philosophers who created the intellectual foundation for the occurrence of the French and industrial revolutions. They literally made the revolutions possible, acceptable. And it was the occurrence of these revolutions which led to a fundamental transformation of European society, or led to the modernization of Europe. To understand that modernization process, to understand the birth of modern society and the associated problems, a new discipline emerged. बहुत धन्यवाद. Read this from Nitin Sangwan as well, Emergence of Sociology. Thank you guys. I am here if any of you have any doubts, feel free.